resurrection of Jesus. Christ is risen is the traditional Easter greeting. And the response is, he is risen indeed. The resurrection of Jesus is central to Christian faith. It is celebrated every Sunday and in a special way on Easter Sunday and throughout the 50-day Easter season. Christ was put to death on a cross on Friday, and on the third day, the Sunday, the first day of the week, the tomb was found empty, and he presented himself to his disciples that day and over the course of the next 40 days. He was risen from the dead. This claim is as striking as it is incomprehensible. We have no experience in life, no verified evidence in sober history books of someone who was truly dead and then was no longer dead and no longer even capable of death. When we think about the resurrection, it is easy for our minds to fall short of the reality. There have been many explanations of the Christian belief in Jesus' resurrection over the past 2,000 years that try to make sense of it in a way that doesn't face the full reality of his bodily resurrection. It is said that the disciples can't really have meant that Jesus got up out of the tomb. Resurrection must have been a metaphor for his presence among them. The apostles must have had a vision of Jesus alive with God and called this resurrection. A living, dead body is simply not possible, it is said. In fact, many Christians even assume that the resurrection refers to Jesus being in heaven now after his death. It is presumed that on Easter Sunday, Jesus appeared to reveal to his disciples that he is truly God and that he has shown the way to get to heaven. They think that Jesus' resurrection gives us the promise of an afterlife in heaven, where when our bodies are dead, we will rise in soul to be with him for all eternity. Yet this is not the full reality of the resurrection. This is not even Christian belief. The resurrection of Jesus, in fact, shows us that what awaits us is not a bodiless afterlife, but what biblical scholar N.T. Wright calls life after death, where we, like Jesus, will be returned to our full bodily, earthly existence. The biblical testimony can help us see the full implications of this. Because if we don't believe, if we don't see that death is over with the resurrection of Jesus, we are limited in how we understand our bodily existence today. Now, admittedly, the accounts of the resurrection in the Gospels and in Paul's letter to the Corinthians are not easy to make sense of historically. Each account describes the events of Easter morning in different ways, many of which are simply contradicted by the others. This is not where we begin, though, to make sense of the resurrection. The historical details were not what was most important to the gospel writers. Since these accounts were written down many years after the events, what overwhelms the accounts is the breathtaking joy of the day. The details of who did what and when seem to have been remembered only in fragments, reconstructed by each gospel writer in order to bring out the meaning of the event in their own way. It is the general message that counts. And this is the same across the passages. Jesus is no longer dead, but he is risen. And this means that he lives again in the fullness of his bodily existence. This means that the tomb is empty, and he is himself, his full self, in a body that is now completely penetrated by the spiritual reality that is the Spirit of God. His full self is what is present to the disciples, his full bodily self, which is now beyond death. In fact, if we want to make sense biblically of what the resurrection means, we have to go back further than Easter morning. In fact, the biblical reality of the resurrection is interpreted by the entire sweep of the scriptural narrative. As Genesis puts it, the earth is God's creation out of his goodness. It is made as the perfect home, paradise for humans who are themselves drawn from the stuff of creation. We humans have the unique quality of being the reflection of God in created form, and we were made to share in God's own life. This is where the Christian idea of soul is situated, our unique quality as bodily beings sharing in God's Spirit. This means that everything that is wrong with the world is neither due to God nor to the created world. The promise that echoes through the Old Testament is one of a renewed humanity in which our delight is in God. This makes us able to delight in the world. At the present time, our bodily pleasures threaten to destroy us, but the scriptural solution is not to escape from these pleasures to a neutered heavenly realm. It is the joy of heaven descended to earth, where earth becomes a paradise once again. Our current bodily existence, burdened by disorder, will become a spiritualized bodily existence. Our heart of stone will become a heart of flesh, and we will put on the glorious body being prepared for us by God. We're invited to enter more fully into creation, to come to the water, to feast at the table of the Lord. Isaiah speaks over and over again about the refreshment, a very physical refreshment, promised on the day of the Lord. The resurrection of Jesus is the confirmation and beginning of all of this. Throughout his life, nature responded and was renewed. The blind were healed, the deaf could hear, the lame could walk. The resurrection marks the beginning of the renewal of life, where our frail bodies are given a new share in God's own Spirit. Jesus' resurrection is the demonstration that we can be more than oriented toward death. We can instead truly live. This is why his resurrection can only be bodily. It is not only the revelation that he is God, it is the revelation that God has taken our broken humanity and united it to himself, bursting the power of death, healing our being of the ultimate wound that cuts us off from the life of God. United to the Spirit, his human death becomes the end of death. We celebrate the resurrection because it is the ultimate good news. Life is worth living. The fragmented pleasures that we experience here and now become the promise of our true life. We discover that this is indeed our home. This is indeed our body. This is indeed me. And we long for the Spirit to renew the face of the earth, as Psalm 104 says. The day of the Lord, as one hymn puts it, is not when spirits depart this life, but rather it is a day for wheat fields to prosper, for grapes to grow on the vine, a day for people to ponder their gifts and share with their neighbors their wine. The resurrection shows us that we are complete in our bodies and charts a path for spiritual and bodily renewal. It shows us that the proper way to live is not in fear and denial of our body and our connection with one another, but the training of our senses and our relationships for a new deepening of our physical, relational existence in Christ. He is risen indeed.